One of the questions I often get is how confidential is therapy? The conversation I have with adolescents and children usually looks pretty different from the one I have with adults because the concerns are different. Children want to know who's going to know in general, including their parents, and most importantly, their parents. And adults want to know who's going to know, but more like their job and other doctors and how could it affect their livelihood in the future. And so I just want to go over a few things that you may or may not have known, or to the extent in which this is, because I do think this may be a barrier for some people for why they haven't sought therapy yet. Because I know in some professions, like when it comes to what is that profession called? All I know is pilots specifically, there is stigma and taboo, and it used to not be good. Um, it used to be it was frowned upon actually for pilots to be seeking mental health, even though you would think they would want them to be mentally stable driving a plane or flying a plane. But so sometimes people in certain professions don't seek mental health even though they want to and or need to, because they're afraid of who's going to know and what they'll know. And I know that even includes going into the armed services like the military and things like that. Your mental health background matters. And so I will say, for stuff like that, when it comes to the government, you should be honest. But in general, there are some boundaries around which we consider confidentiality in therapy. And I think it's very important to note that this is board rules. So by law, we are bound by our board rules and code of ethics. Whereas if you were just seeing a life coach or somebody who was not licensed, there's a lot of people who have companies or businesses, especially online these days, who offer mental health related services without the license. And so some people think they're getting more than therapy or better than therapy or therapy adjacent, which is not true, because our license protects us and you as a client, whereas they can kind of do what they want and you really probably can't sue them, because no one said they couldn't do it. And the question may be, why would you listen to them anyway? So make sure you read the contracts. If you're signing paperwork, you should be. Somewhere in the fine print, it probably says they're not responsible for certain things. They can't represent you in the court of law, things like that, because there's no license. But also, you should understand too, because they don't have a license and may or may not have a certificate, you should question their knowledge and where they've gotten it from, how they've acquired it. It's not to say people who aren't licensed may not know more or have anything to add to the subject. I'm just saying, as far as the protection and thoroughness of education and it being tested and things like that, that comes in questions when you do not have a license. So just keep that in mind. So confidentiality in general, our general rules, except in certain situations, is we must report. We are mandated reporters. We must report if you are in danger, someone else is in danger. If you're hurting someone, someone is hurting you. Um, what's the other one? Oh my goodness. Now it's slipping for me. Don't embarrass me, Brian. Uh, what is the third one? If you want to hurt someone, you want to hurt yourself, or somebody wants to hurt you or is hurting you. Sorry, brain fart. It's late in the evening today when I'm recording this. Yes. So if you're in danger or other people are in danger due to you or other people, then we do have to report. Now, before people be like, I know a lot of people get concerned, and I talked about this in another video, of being honest when they feel like, I just don't want to be here no more. I just want this to be over. People are scared to be honest that they're at their wits end, because they don't want you to call the police or put them in a hospital or things like that. A professional that is licensed, that knows what they're doing and works with trauma, knows how to thoroughly assess. And for the most part, I know me specifically, I will evaluate for the different. If you say, oh, I'm just sick of everything, I'm tired of everything, I'm tired of life, I am not going to immediately assume that I'm never going to see you again after this appointment. There are people who will do that, and there's a time and place for that. But I don't want you to not be honest and transparent of how bad things are, how bad you feel, because you're afraid people may overreact or misunderstand that you're just frustrated and overwhelmed. Okay. So those are some of the nuances we do keep in mind. But in general, we keep you safe. That includes if lawyers call us, police calls us, we have to be subpoenaed. Now, we do not go to court for free if you need us in court, but there your therapist read the fine print. There's something in there that says if we have to testify on your behalf, then it is going to cost you a whole lot of money. Then probably all your sessions combined that you've had thus far. But in general, we cannot just people. No one, the police can't call and say, "Hey, I'm Officer so and so." Whether they have a badge number, or whatever. I don't know who you're talking about. Don't know who that is. We cannot even confirm or deny who you are to people. And this goes to the extent of if I if you refer somebody to me and they say, "Oh, you see my friend, she's your client," and they say your name, I'm like, "Oh, okay, I don't." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, do you know so and so?" Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Like that's how strict it's supposed to be according to our rules. Is we just play dumb. So if I see you in public and you're my client, I cannot just go say, "Hey, Crystal," because then I'm breaching confidentiality. Because if anybody were to ask how I know you, I'd have to say you're my client. So that's breaching. But if you saw me and said hello, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, how are you?" I'm not gonna cold shoulder you. Some therapists may, but I'm not. But then you you have identified me. So now people would ask you, "Oh, how you know her?" If you want to say that's your therapist, that's your business because that's you're telling your own business. I cannot tell your business. I can't tell people you're in therapy. So even for my clients, when they get real comfortable, I have to remind them, one, I'm not your friend. Two, if anything, I'm your imaginary friend. You and people who you talk to me about know me. I don't know any of them, and let's keep it that way. So I like having that boundary in place. I'm just an imaginary friend. I only exist in this private, confidential space of us together. Outside of that, maybe I'm real, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm a ghost. Okay. So I hope that stuff makes sense, even though I had a few brain slips. So when it comes to insurance, people want to know, like, can insurance see it? To an extent, right? So if you're using insurance, when we file okay, back up one step. If you want to use insurance, you have to have a diagnosis. So if you're avoiding any diagnoses because you don't want nothing on paper, pay out of pocket. Because there's nobody who will request those, request those records, whereas insurance can request them, right? So in order for us to accept your insurance, there has to be a diagnosis. So you're going to get a diagnosis. So don't assume, oh, I don't have a diagnosis. I've never been diagnosed with anything. If you're using insurance, you've been diagnosed with something, and you should ask if they have not told you what the diagnosis is. You've been diagnosed with something or a few things, and you just don't know because that's the only way insurance will accept it. Now, once insurance accepts the claims, they can do audits in which they say whose record is this, they've been in therapy. They do random audits. Sometimes their therapists don't submit things right, and sometimes insurance is a scam. They just be doing stuff, but they're not fine tooth combing through everybody's documents all day because they got other things to worry about in this economy. But you have to have a diagnosis. So does Blue Cross Blue Shield know that you, Emily, have major depressive disorder? No. Could they find out? Yes. Now, at the same time, depending on who you're working with, you can have the conversation of, can I say this? What's on record and what's not. I do know of therapists who treat diagnoses even though on paper you have a different one. I'm not saying that anybody should be doing that. I'm not saying to ask people to do that. I'm just saying it happens because sometimes the therapist does want to protect the client. Now, the diagnosis on paper, to be clear, is accurate, but if there's additional diagnoses that could implicate you or interfere with your livelihood, it may not be the official diagnosis code. The therapist may write it in their notes that cannot be subpoenaed or accessed. So insurance has limited access to your record because they want to know what they're covering. But as far as like all the ins and outs, and that's why I said to an extent, they don't see everything and know everything. They don't know everything you said because we are not sending in scripts. We're just saying, we saw you today, you alive, you in a good mood, you in a bad mood. You talked about your cousin getting on your nerves, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. That's kind of what gets submitted. That's what gets subpoenaed. What you really said of how you can't stand that cousin, and if you see her next time, you're gonna do X, Y. They can't see that. That's not there. But they can see the diagnosis. So if you are concerned about your diagnosis, talk to the professional, your provider, about your concerns of the diagnosis that's on record, and they should be able to explain this process to you. So, can insurance see what your diagnosis is? Yes. Can they see everything? No. As far as public records, our stuff is not public. Again, our stuff is confidential. It's locked. We have to keep it locked, say for years and years and years. Even after we see you, we have to keep it for another few years. Everything we use on the internet has to be locked and have all these verifications. People can't just log into our computer and access this stuff. If you keep paper files, you have to keep those locked. Like there's a standard. We have a standard for how we have to run in this business and take care of you to keep you safe. That's our job. Okay. And so there's no way anybody can just Google you or look you up. And I say that because people are concerned about employers finding out. Even if you were using your employee benefits outside of insurance, say you're using an EAP, if you're using something like timely care through your school for therapy, just because the employer or the school is technically paying for the services because they paid the providers or whatever company that is finding therapists, that is not, they're not paying for access. They're just paying for somebody else to do the job. They just kind of like contract that out, so that they don't have to do it. Instead of having therapists on at your job is just like, we'll pay some therapists to help these people, right? And so they can't say, oh, we know Susie is using her EAP. What is she using it for? That is illegal, and no one should give them those records, and them requesting those records should cause some type of trouble with somebody's HR, PR, somebody. But they can, unless you're going around telling people, yeah, oh yeah, I'm using my EAP, or oh yeah, I'm in therapy. Your employer, your school, whoever is contributing to your benefits does not have access to this information. They don't. Because remember, if they call me, I'm gonna say, who is that? Matter of fact, I got subpoenaed about a year ago, and the police called me, the investigator called me, the DA called me, CPS called me, and they were saying like, "Oh, we know you know this client," and I was like, "I don't know if I know them. I'm not sure if I know them." Yeah, you would think someone would be scared, but literally cannot confirm or deny who you are. And they're like, "I know you know," and I'm like, and so first I was like, "I need the subpoena before I can talk to you." And then once I got the subpoena, I gave them limited information. But in general, even one of the detectives, he was like, "I know you know this person." I was like, "You don't know that I know that person. I don't know if I know that person." And he was like, "I know you know the client because your name is on the CPS report." And I was like, mm, "I don't, I don't recall. I don't know if made that report. I don't know if I know this person you're talking about." Until they got the subpoena, and then when we talked like nothing happened. And I'm sure they're frustrated, but they know our rules because they got rules too. They can't be going telling everybody business. Now people do be pillow talking to their spouses and their friends, as you shouldn't. Um, and to be fair, because I know I mentioned stories of clients and some people on social media, some professionals specifically, use certain examples. The thing with confidentiality is we can't give anything that's identifiable. So I can never say too much about a client that you can probably find them or be like, I know who that is. It might be vague enough that a bunch of people might think they know who I'm talking about, but I can't say like the sex, the age, the city and state they live in, and where they work, because you can find them, and that is putting them in danger. That is breaching confidentiality. But if I'm like, I have this client and she said this, you don't know who she is. That could be a trans female. She could be in North Carolina. She could be in South Dakota. She can be next door. You don't know who she is. You don't know what she looks like. You don't know how old she. You know what I'm saying? So that's the difference when you're, if you're thinking like, people talk about they put their client's business online all the time. We put the situation. I put the situation, and they're supposed to just put the situation if they're making it a teachable moment. But the specifics of who did what is not to be online, and it should not. And if you see it, you should probably report them. Hey, now if you are a danger to yourself, to someone else, or somebody wants to hurt you, when it comes to breaching confidentiality, I've already told you at the beginning, those are the three situations in which we got to keep you alive or somebody else alive or stop somebody from hurting you. Okay. So when it comes to no longer wanting to be alive, we do have to report it. But I mentioned at the beginning that is going to be thoroughly assessed to the extent of you being in danger or whoever you're telling us about is in danger. Um, but I would like to say, like, if you have a history of that, that we know the difference from history to prior. So if you're telling us stuff that happened when you were 5 and you're 35, there's likely not going to be a report. Now, if it's been happening from 5 to 35 and you're still experiencing whatever this is, then that's different. We probably will have to report it depending on what's going on. But if you're 35 and this happened when you were 7, you're just telling us, and this includes if you've broken a law. I've had scammers as clients and all the things. I've with some pretty interesting records. None of my business. Again, unless somebody's in danger. If you took that from Walmart and you tell me, sorry to Walmart, but I'm not gonna call the police and be like, hey, I have a client stealing from Walmart. Because then I would be breaching confidentiality telling them I have a client. You know what I'm saying? Now I'm pretty sure when it comes to breaking some laws, that's different. Nothing is one size fit all, but I just want you to know you can be you should be able to be honest with your therapist about pretty much anything, including no longer want to be alive, including if you want to beat the hell out of somebody, you should be able to say that and be working with a therapist who will thoroughly assess and understand your personality to know nobody's actually in danger versus mm, I see a little twitch in your eye. I think you might be for real and things like that. Then confidentiality does get tricky. But I will say, even when we make reports, and this goes into my last point about emergency contacts, no one's calling them and saying, hey, Christina, I've been using all girl names. Michael has been with us. I've been seeing Michael for the last 2 years. And today in therapy, he said XYZ. So I need you to take him to the hospital or XYZ. That illegal. I can get sued for that. If I'm having to breach confidentiality, it's just enough information to keep you alive. Hey, if I'm calling the police, for example, and or CPS, CPS is a little different. If I call the police and I'm like, hey, I think this person's life's in danger. This is where they live. Please check on them. 1, 2, 3. Hey, do a welfare check for this person. They're gonna say, how do you know them? I'm gonna say, I'm a client. They're my client. What in the past they've never said like, what do they see you for? How long? They don't even ask because they probably know they can't. But I will say that I'm a licensed professional and they're a client. And during our session today, they said these things that have me concerned. So, but if I was to call your emergency contact because, say, especially if you're a minor, and I need to let your parents know what's going on because you've not told them because you're scared of how they're going to respond or they've responded poorly in the past or whatever it is you're going to get in trouble for telling them, then it's a simple same thing. Hey, please take little Jimmy to the hospital immediately. And this is kind of a transfer of liability because I'm a document that I told you to do X, Y, and Z. Call these 3 people and do this within the next 24 hours. If you don't do that, whatever happens to little Jimmy, that's on you. You can't be like, yeah, he was seeing a therapist. And that therapist, if it's me, told you exactly what to do. So if I don't trust you to do it, I will do it myself. I'm calling the police. I'm calling CPS. But in general, outside of that, if say because parents are usually there at the time of the visit, even if they're not in the session, I bring this parent in. Hey, after talking with Timothy today, I need you to book an appointment with a psychiatrist. I need you to take him to the hospital. He doesn't need to get home. I need you to remove all sharp objects from your house. I'm just giving you the thing. I'm not going to be like, you've been pissing Timothy off and Timothy is mad at this person and this person. And Timothy is very upset that he didn't get what he wanted. I'm not telling Timothy's business. This is not a tell-all session. And that's what I want you to understand. And in none of these situations is this a tell your business. We never have a right to do that. We always have the right and the expectation to keep you safe. And we are supposed to exercise discretion when doing that. So I hope this helps anybody and everybody who watches, as far as like how honest you can be, what you should and shouldn't say. If you don't feel like you can trust your therapist with the stuff I'm saying, get another one. And I mean that with my whole heart and chest. I'm gonna make another video about choosing a therapist. But if you feel like your therapist already doesn't understand you, take stuff the wrong way, whether it's cultural, language, or they just not interested in what you have to say, or they blame like, oh, you're just a kid and you don't understand, or oh, you miss whatever it is. If you do not feel validated or understood or heard by your therapist, get another one today, immediately, right now. Exit out of here and go find and start shopping for a new therapist, because you should, for the most part, be like, I don't want to say this, but I know if I could tell anybody, I could tell this person. At least that's how I like my clients to feel. So hope this helps.